What happens when a racist manager denies a hardworking black employee the promotion he rightfully earned, only to face the ultimate payback years later? Meet Keenan Blake, an ambitious, dedicated professional who gave his all to Meriden Financial. He was smart, he was capable, he was the best in his department, but when it was time for a promotion, his boss, Phillip Grayson, shut the door in his face. Not because Keenan wasn't qualified, but because of the color of his skin. Keenan walked away that day, but he didn't forget. Years later, he returns, not as an employee, not as a hopeful candidate, but as the new owner of the company. How did Keenan turn rejection into a victory? What shocking moment left his former boss speechless? And when the tables finally turned, how did Keenan deliver the ultimate justice? Buckle up, because this is a story of resilience, revenge, and a power shift no one saw coming. Before we continue, make sure to like the video and subscribe the channel so the community can grow, and we can bring you more stories like this. Now, let's get into it. The return. The glass doors of Meriden Financial slid open with a soft whoosh, ushering in a man who walked with quiet authority. His polished black shoes barely made a sound against the gleaming marble floors, but his presence carried a weight that demanded attention. Some employees glanced up from their desks, their brows furrowing at the unfamiliar yet oddly familiar figure. Others, especially those who had been around for a while, froze mid-motion, their eyes widening in disbelief. The name on the building hadn't changed. Meriden Financial still stood tall, its logo proudly displayed behind the front desk. But what no one in this office knew yet, not even the man sitting in the glass-walled corner office, was that the company they had built their careers in was no longer under the same leadership. It belonged to someone else now, Keenan Blake. The same Keenan Blake who had once walked these very halls as an ambitious young analyst. The same Keenan Blake who had poured his heart into this company, working long hours, exceeding every expectation, only to be denied the promotion he rightfully earned. Not because he wasn't qualified, not because he hadn't outperformed his peers, but because his skin was the wrong shade for someone they wanted in leadership. Keenan took a deep breath, his dark brown eyes scanning the space. It looked exactly the same. The pristine cubicles, the overpriced modern art hanging on the walls, the subtle hum of printers and hushed conversations. But everything was different now. The receptionist, a woman in her mid-30s, offered him a polite but uncertain smile. "Good morning, sir. Do you have an appointment?" Keenan returned the smile, but there was something unreadable in his expression. "No appointment," he said smoothly. "I don't need one." A flicker of confusion crossed her face. "I'm sorry, but—" Before she could finish, a voice boomed from the far end of the office. "Excuse me, can I help you?" Keenan turned, slowly, deliberately. And there he was, Phillip Grayson, the man who had once sat behind the desk Keenan had worked tirelessly to earn. The man who had smirked as he slid a rejection letter across the table telling him, "You're just not the right fit for leadership, Keenan." Maybe in a few years. The same Phillip Grayson who had no idea that, as of this morning, he was no longer the boss, but the employee. Keenan smiled. Not the warm, friendly smile he used to wear back when he had still believed in fairness. No, this one had an edge to it. "I'd say you can help me," Keenan said, stepping forward. "But I'm not sure you'll like how." Grayson frowned, clearly sizing him up, trying to place the face that seemed both familiar and impossible at the same time. Then realization dawned. His lips parted slightly, his posture stiffened, and for the first time, the man who once controlled Keenan's future found himself standing on unstable ground, because Keenan Blake was back, and this time, he was in control. If you're yet to like the video and subscribe, make sure to do that now. The shift in power. Phillip Grayson blinked rapidly, his face shifting from confusion to forced composure. He straightened his tie, a reflex, an unconscious attempt to maintain authority. "Blake?" he said, his voice laced with disbelief. Keenan tilted his head slightly. You remember me? Grayson let out a short, humorless chuckle. Well, this is unexpected. His eyes darted toward the receptionist as if to silently ask, why is he here? Then, with a cautious smile, he said, It's been years. What brings you back? Keenan let the silence stretch, savoring the unease settling over Grayson. Then he leaned in slightly. I own the place. Grayson's smirk faltered. His brows knitted together in an expression that was almost comical in its disbelief. Excuse me? Keenan's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. I said, I own the place. As of this morning, Meriden Financial is under new management. Mine. For a moment, the entire floor seemed to hold its breath. Employees at nearby desks stopped typing. A few heads peeked over cubicles. The air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were bracing for impact. Grayson forced out another laugh, but this one sounded weaker. That's impossible. Meriden isn't for sale. Keenan reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a neatly folded document. He unfolded it slowly, deliberately, before holding it up for Grayson to see. The company acquisition papers. Signed. Sealed. Done. Grayson's eyes darted across the page, scanning for something, anything, that would tell him this was some kind of mistake. But the only mistake was the one he had made years ago when he underestimated Keenan Blake. Keenan let the moment sink in before slipping the document back into his pocket. I didn't need to buy Meriden, he said. I wanted to. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Grayson could hear. You denied me a promotion, said I wasn't the right fit for leadership. Grayson's jaw tightened. Keenan smiled. Guess you were wrong. Grayson opened his mouth, probably to protest, but Keenan didn't give him the chance. He turned toward the employees who were now fully engaged in the unfolding drama. Good morning, everyone, Keenan announced, his voice carrying through the office. I know this is unexpected news, so let me make it simple. I'm Keenan Blake. Years ago, I worked here. I gave my all to this company, and when it was time for me to move up, I was told no. He let his gaze sweep across the room. I didn't complain, I didn't beg, I left, and now... His smile was razor sharp. I'm back. As your new CEO, a murmur rippled through the room. Grayson took a step forward. Blake, let's talk in private. Keenan didn't move. He met Grayson's gaze head on. I don't think you're in a position to demand anything. For the first time, Phillip Grayson looked truly afraid. The weight of consequences. Phillip Grayson's expression tightened, his forced composure cracking at the edges. He shifted uncomfortably, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt like he could somehow smooth over the power shift unraveling before him. Keenan, he began, his voice lower now, more measured. Let's talk in private. There's no need for a spectacle. Keenan tilted his head, studying him. A spectacle? His voice was calm, but there was an undeniable edge beneath it. You mean like the one you made when you shut down my promotion in front of the entire board? Grayson exhaled through his nose, his jaw tightening. That was years ago. And yet, here we are, Keenan said, taking a slow step forward. Only difference is, now I call the shots. A hush fell over the office, the weight of those words sinking into every corner. Employees exchanged glances, pretending to work, but fully tuned in. The tension in the air was thick, like a thunderstorm about to break. Keenan let the silence stretch, savoring the unease settling over Grayson. Then he turned to the nearest employee, a young woman clutching a tablet so tightly her knuckles had gone white. What's your name? The woman blinked, clearly caught off guard. Emily. Keenan offered her a reassuring nod. Nice to meet you, Emily. Tell me something. Who's the hardest working person in this office? Emily's eyes flickered to Grayson, hesitation written all over her face. It's okay, Keenan said smoothly. Be honest. She hesitated a moment longer, then exhaled. Renee Patel. She's in accounting. Keenan smiled. Good to know. He turned back to Grayson, who was now watching him like a cornered animal. You see, Phillip, Keenan said, voice cool, deliberate. Hard work deserves recognition. Talent deserves reward. And leadership? He took another step closer. Leadership isn't about making sure people like you keep their power. It's about elevating the ones who've earned it. Grayson's throat bobbed as he swallowed. What exactly are you saying? Keenan's smile didn't waver. I'm saying your time is up. The color drained from Grayson's face. You can clear out your office by the end of the day, Keenan continued. You'll receive a severance package, generous even, but you will not be stepping foot in this building as an employee after today. Murmurs rippled through the office like a shockwave. Some employees stared at Grayson, others at Keenan, their expressions ranging from stunned to barely concealed satisfaction. You can't just fire me, Grayson stammered, his voice unsteady. I built this company. Keenan chuckled low and deep. No, you maintained it. The people here? He gestured around the office. They built it, and I'm going to make sure the right people finally get what they deserve. Grayson opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, Phillip Grayson, the man who once controlled Keenan's future, had no power left to wield. Reclaiming the throne. Phillip Grayson stood frozen, his lips parting like he wanted to argue, but no words came. For years he had been the one with authority, the one who dictated who rose and who remained stagnant. Now, the power had been stripped from him in an instant. Keenan watched him, expression unreadable. He could feel the weight of every set of eyes in the office, the quiet exhilaration of employees who had once feared speaking out. But this wasn't just about Grayson. It was about setting the tone for what came next. Grayson finally found his voice. You're making a mistake, he said, a weak attempt at regaining control. I know this company inside and out. You can't just... Keenan raised a hand, cutting him off. You were comfortable here for too long, Phillip. You thought that as long as you surrounded yourself with the right people, played by your own rules, you'd never be replaced. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only Grayson could hear. But the thing about power? It shifts. And now, it's mine. Grayson's nostrils flared, his face reddening, but he must have realized there was no saving himself. No more smooth-talking his way out, no more manipulation. Keenan straightened, his voice commanding. Monica. The receptionist snapped to attention. Yes, sir? Call security. Mr. Grayson will be escorted out once he's packed his things. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the office. A final blow. Monica hesitated, her gaze flicking nervously between the two men. Grayson's jaw clenched. There's no need for security, he muttered, voice thick with humiliation. I'll leave. Keenan gave a slow nod. Good. Grayson turned on his heel, his steps stiff and mechanical as he strode toward his office. Employees quickly looked away, pretending to focus on their screens, but the tension in the air was electric. Keenan exhaled, letting the moment settle. Then he did something no one expected. He clapped his hands together, a sharp sound that broke the silence. All right, he said, turning to the room. Now that we've handled that, let's get to work. There was a pause, then a shift. A few employees straightened in their chairs. Others exchanged glances as if silently wondering what kind of leader Keenan Blake would be. Here's how this is going to go, Keenan continued, his voice carrying authority. I don't care about office politics. I don't care who you used to report to. The only thing that matters to me is talent and results. If you do your job, if you bring value to this company, you'll be rewarded. He let his gaze sweep the room. If you don't, well, I think we've already established what happens. A few people swallowed hard. Any questions? Keenan asked. Silence. Good. He had reclaimed what was stolen from him. And now it was time to build something even greater. Reshaping the future. A slow ripple of movement spread through the office. Employees exchanged cautious glances, uncertainty lingering in the air like an unspoken question. Keenan could feel it. The hesitation, the curiosity, the quiet anticipation. He had just upended their world in a matter of minutes. Now they were waiting to see what kind of leader he would be. Keenan turned, walking toward the conference room at the center of the floor. He pushed open the glass door and held it for a beat. "Department heads," he announced. "Conference room, now." There was a pause, then a scramble. Chairs slid back, papers shuffled, and a handful of managers rushed to gather their things. Keenan didn't move from the doorway, watching as they filed in. Some looked nervous, others wore masks of professionalism, hiding whatever they truly felt beneath polite expressions. Good. He wanted them on edge. When the last manager stepped inside, Keenan closed the door and took his place at the head of the long glass table. "I'll make this short," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "We're not running this company the way it was before. Effective immediately, promotions, raises, and opportunities will be based on performance. Not favoritism, not bias, and definitely not some outdated belief of who fits in leadership." A few people shifted in their seats. Keenan leaned forward. "I know how this place used to work. I was here. I watched great employees get passed over while others were handed positions they didn't earn. That stops now." A man to Keenan's left, someone in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair, cleared his throat. "And if we disagree?" Keenan didn't blink. "Then you're free to walk out with Grayson." The room went still. Keenan let the weight of his words sink in. Then he continued, his voice smooth. "I'm not here to play games. I bought this company because I know its potential, and I know what it can be when the right people are given the chance to succeed." Silence. Then, from the far end of the table, a woman spoke up. "I think this is exactly what we need." Keenan turned to her. Renee Patel, accounting manager. The same woman Emily had mentioned earlier. Renee met his gaze without hesitation. "A lot of us have been waiting for change," she said. "Waiting for someone to shake things up." Keenan nodded. "Good." He glanced around the table. "If you're here to work, to contribute, and to build something great, you have nothing to worry about. But if you were part of the problem, if you're holding on to the old way of doing things, this is your warning. That era is over." A beat of silence. Then, slowly, a few heads nodded. Keenan sat back. The message had been sent. Now it was time to see who was ready to rise. A new order. The conference room remained tense, the weight of Keenan's words settling over the managers like a storm cloud. Some sat stiffly, arms crossed, eyes avoiding his. Others looked thoughtful, calculating their next move. Keenan let the silence stretch before he leaned forward, clasping his hands together. "Now that we've established how things will run, let's talk specifics." He turned his gaze to Renee Patel. "Accounting," he said. "You've been here how long?" She straightened in her chair. 12 years. 12 years, Keenan repeated, nodding. "And in those 12 years, how many times were you considered for a promotion?" Renee hesitated. "Once." Keenan didn't react, but his jaw tensed slightly. "And did you get it?" She exhaled. "No." Keenan's eyes swept across the room. "Anyone surprised?" Silence. He smirked. "Neither am I." He turned back to Renee. "As of today, you're the new head of finance." Her lips parted slightly. "Wait. What?" "You heard me," Keenan said simply. "I've seen your numbers. I've seen how you cleaned up the messes others made, even when you weren't given credit for it." He leaned back. "This isn't charity. It's earned." A slow, stunned murmur spread through the room. One of the other managers, a man in his 50s named Todd, frowned. "With all due respect, Promotions usually go through. The old process, Keenan cut in. Yes, I'm aware. He gave Todd a pointed look. That process rewarded the wrong people. We're done with that. Todd pursed his lips, clearly biting back whatever he wanted to say. Keenan tapped the table once. Anyone else have an issue? No one spoke. Good, he said, standing. We'll be restructuring over the next few weeks. If you're pulling your weight, you'll be fine. If not... He let the sentence trail off, letting them fill in the blanks. He stepped toward the door but paused before opening it. One last thing, he said, turning back. For years, this company overlooked talent. That stops now. If you know someone who's been working twice as hard for half the recognition, bring their name to my office. His gaze flickered to Renee. People like you deserve a seat at the table, and I plan to make room. Renee gave a small nod, her expression unreadable. Keenan finally pushed the door open, stepping back into the main office. Conversations halted. Employees straightened, their eyes flicking to him with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He smiled. A new era had begun, and Keenan Blake was just getting started. In life, setbacks aren't the end. They're just a setup for a greater comeback. Keenan didn't let racism and injustice define his future. He didn't fight back with anger, he fought back with success. He worked hard, played smart, and built himself into a force that couldn't be ignored. This story is a powerful reminder that the best revenge isn't shouting or arguing. It's proving them wrong with your achievements. If someone shuts a door in your face, don't waste energy trying to break it down. Build your own door. Build your own future. And one day, you'll be the one holding the keys. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notification to be the first to know when interesting and lesson-packed stories like this one drop.